Storytime about my psycho boyfriend and backstabbing best friend. So a little background information, I was 17 and in 12th grade, and we're going to call my best friend Sheila. And she had just met this guy who was, quote, the love of her life on this vegan Facebook page. Well, the one day while they're on FaceTime, his best friend Brad saw what I looked like and he wanted my phone number. Fast forward, she gives it to him and I start talking and we hit it off instantly. I definitely thought that he was boyfriend material, because even though we lived like 5 hours away from each other, we would Skype for like 9 hours a day, every day. Fast forward to my birthday, we make things official, and he wanted to see me for my birthday, so he decided to get a hotel room for us. So finally, him and I meet in person, and we end up doing the nasty, and it was terrible, but he was my boyfriend, so Well, after this, he ends up becoming weirdly obsessed with me. He starts saying things like the next time that he comes and sees me, we're gonna get married. After talking to Sheila about it, I decided to break things off with him, because things were moving way too fast, and it freaked me out. After I told him this, he started sobbing. He was like, I wish I would have got you pregnant so that way you couldn't leave me. And I'm in shock because, dude, it has been 3 months. You need to calm down. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my psycho ex and my backstabbing best friend. So like I said, Sheila convinced me to break up with him, and I did. Fast forward, Sheila becomes super distant with me, and she's posting stuff on her Facebook like, oh, when your new boo gives you his hoodie. And her man had broke up, so I texted her asking who it was about, because I'm her best friend, duh. Finally, a few days later, after she was done avoiding me, she decides to answer with, we need to talk. I slept with Brad, and now him and I are in love with each other. And I'm like, what the hell happened to girl code? Like, yeah, I didn't want him, but at the same time, you're a snake. Like, ew. Anyway, so then she starts saying things like he's the best boyfriend, and the reason why I'm single is because I wasn't appreciative of him. I ended up messaging her ex and telling him what happened, and to get our get back, we slept together. Fast forward a month goes by, and then I get a text from Sheila and Brad on the same day saying that they broke up because both of them cheated on each other. And it was quite comical because Brad's like, yeah, you were the best girlfriend I ever had, and then Sheila's like, yeah, you were my best friend. I don't know why I would do that to you. I told both of them to F off, and then I told her ex what happened. So him and I laugh about it, and then 2 days later, I get a text from him saying that him and Sheila are getting married. Yeah. Storytime about how my best friend punched me in the face just to impress a group of boys. A little background information. My best friend did not have a lot of experience with boys. Once she did start talking to boys, this girl did a personality switch as soon as a boy walked into a room. She would usually just act a little bit more of like a pick-me, but never like make fun of me in front of the boys. Well, the one night her and I, we went to this party. Her and I liked the same guy, which is always a recipe for disaster. But to make sure that there were no issues, we both decided that whoever he liked would get him. Majority of the night, he ends up talking to me. And I didn't really think that there was a problem because she seemed like she was fine with it. Until a little bit later, I hear her screaming, I want to fight someone. She's like, Brad, do you know that she can't fight? He's like, oh, you can't fight? And he goes, I think you two should fight right now. So then I'm like, I'm not doing this. And she goes, no, I think Brad's right. I think we should fight. So then I'm like, okay, well, you can have fun fighting somebody else because I'm leaving. She runs outside, grabs me by my hair, and punches me in the face. And just literally actually just beats the shit out of me. I did end up pressing charges on her, but moral of the story, don't be best friends with girls who don't know how to act around men. Storytime about how my best friend got over. So a little background information. We were in 9th grade and we were 15 whenever this all happened. We're gonna call my best friend Ethan. Well, Ethan was dating this girl, Brianna, and they broke up after like 7 months of dating. Which, if we're being completely honest, it was for the best. They were toxic as obviously, what does Ethan do after this happens? He comes to his best friends for advice because obviously he still loves Brianna. Anyways, so he comes to me and our other best friend, Matthew, and he's like, yeah, like, what should I do? Still love her, still want to be with her, but our relationship was so toxic, da-da-da-da-da. And Matt and I were like, no, you do not need her in your life. I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I just wish my friends would let me be delusional. Do not sit there and tell me that him and I are the most toxic people on earth when we're together. Tell me that him and I are an amazing couple and we're going to be together. Like, I will literally tell my friend when I want her to let me be delusional. I don't know if that's just me. Anyways, we were not about to let Ethan be delusional. We did not want him near this bitch. I had good intentions. I didn't want Ethan to be with her because of how toxic they were. Matt, on the other hand, anyway, so like I said, we're hyping Ethan up and he's like, yeah, you know what? That I don't care if she gets another boyfriend. I don't need her. Well, Ethan, you really shouldn't have said that in front of Matt. Especially the I don't care if she gets another boyfriend part. Anyway, so fast forward, Matt ends up getting with Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Obviously, this is going to make Ethan upset. Personally, in my opinion, Brianna was not a nice person. She was one of those girls that was very fake and thought that she was above everybody else. So Ethan goes and talks to Matt and he's like, hey, what the happened to, oh, you don't need that, she's toxic, da-da-da-da-da, she's this, that, and the next. And I'm just like on the sidelines watching this unfold because I just wasn't getting involved. Anyway, so Matt is like, well, you said that you didn't care if she got another boyfriend. When he said that, that did not go over well with Ethan at all. He was not about to have him use that as an excuse to f him over. So then Ethan goes, you know, you're my best friend. I trusted you, da-da-da-da-da. And then Matt, guess what he does? He just shrugs and he's like, well, I don't know what you want me to do. Anyway, so this led to Ethan and Matt physically fighting.
I ain't gonna lie, he was mad as a motherfucker.
Matt ended up with a broken nose, and Brianna ended up dumping him. So, you know, he really just like got beat up for no reason. But that's what you get for being a snake. Karma's a bitch. Story time about why you should be careful about who you go on vacation with. So a little background information, I was 18 years old and a senior in high school, and I had planned to go on a vacation to Barcelona in Europe with my best friend Kayla and this other girl Megan. Now, we didn't know Megan too well, but we were still friends with her. But I'm not gonna lie, the red flags started before we even left to go to Barcelona. Because as we were booking this trip, Kayla and I wanted to keep a smaller budget because we were going to be leaving for college when we got back. But Megan was not having it at all. She wanted to spend what seemed like every single last penny on this trip. But thankfully, we ended up compromising on a cheap Airbnb in the middle of Budapest. Well, fast forward to whenever we all land in Spain. So we go to the bar and we meet these two British guys. One's name was Will, and he was hanging around with Kayla and I. Then the other one, who we're gonna call Harry, he was chatting it up with Megan. Keep in mind, Megan has a boyfriend. So before we left, the guys asked for our Instagram, and Kayla and I said no, they respected it. But Megan, on the other hand, was giving out her socials. Now, initially, we weren't judging her because you can be friends with guys and have a boyfriend. Next night, we decided to hit the clubs again because literally every night there was crazy. We meet these guys. They were super cool, and one's name was Rylan and the other one's name was Ellis. Rylan was hitting on Megan, and Ellis was totally into me, which I didn't mind because he was so cute. And while we're all hanging out, Megan has the audacity to turn to me and be like, oh my god, I would totally do the nasty with Ellis if I didn't have a boyfriend. Meanwhile, she knew that I was interested in him. Anyways, so the rest of the night, Ellis and I basically spent it together. We exchanged socials, and Megan was super drunk, so we ended up going home. And then Megan decides to call her man while she's in the bed with Kayla, and we all sleep in one room so we can hear everything that the other person's doing. And then she starts having phone, you know what, with her man while she's in the bed with Kayla. And she's taking nude pics of herself and sending them while she's in the bed. Kayla felt extremely uncomfortable. Anyways, fast forward to the next day. Ellis and I hang out again, and we ended up kissing at the end of the night. And Megan was blackout drunk again, but this time on the way home, not only had she been flirting with so many guys, but she was trying to get with Ellis right in front of me. We ended up going to their apartments afterward, and literally, Megan invites him into bed with her. He didn't get into bed with her, but I was so pissed off. Like, you have a boyfriend, and also you're trying to steal some guy that you know that I like. Kayla and I were furious, so we just decided to go and walk home. Fast forward the next day, Megan wakes up and she can't remember anything that happened the day before. After this, the vibe was just awful, but Kayla and I tried to ignore it, and I'm pretty sure that Megan had no idea that there was a bad vibe. Like, I'm pretty sure that she thought nothing she did was wrong. Anyway, so we go to this beach party thing, and Megan was in charge of booking the beach party, right? Kayla and I gave her money to book tickets that was unlimited drinking. What did she do? She did not book the unlimited drinking package. She booked the regular one. Anyway, so Megan starts flirting with this 30-year-old man, and that's whenever Kayla and I decide, okay, we're gonna go walk around because we're not staying here for this. Like, this is our vacation too. Anyways, we make our way back over to Megan, and she looks pissed. She was so mad that we weren't staying with her while she talked to this old man, and we were like, we never even let you out of our sight. Like, we were barely 10 feet away from you, but we're sorry. She was like, yeah, it's the least that you can do after your behavior. And I'm like, what the fuck? So then all of us are arguing on the beach, and usually I'm the one who is very feisty, but Kayla went off. I have never seen her like this ever in my life. Because Megan thought that she could just go off on us and we were gonna stand there and say nothing. So then she orders a cab and we offer to get in it with her, but she says no, and we stayed and we had a really good night. Because one, this is our vacation too, and we are nobody's babysitters. We tried to make sure that you were having a good time, and we took care of you while you were blackout drunk, and you were not about to treat us like shit. Moral of the story, know who you're going on vacation with before you go on vacation. Storytime about how I got away with sleeping with my best friend's brother without her knowing. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade, and we're going to call my best friend's brother Jake. Now, I've always felt like I had a connection with Jake, but I didn't know what kind of connection, so I just ignored it. But I was super close with their mom, and I kind of thought of her as my own. And I would always be over their house because my parents were always fighting, so I knew exactly where they hid their spare key. Anyway, so this night, my parents have been fighting, and I was texting with Jake. And Jake was like, oh, well, you should just come over and we'll hang out. And I said no because I didn't want to upset my best friend. But him and I were still texting throughout the night, and I finally decided to go over their house. I ended up falling asleep in my best friend's room, and then fast forward, I wake up at 3 a.m. So I go to the bathroom, and what are the chances her brother is in there? As he walks out, I walk in, and somehow we both ended up in the bathroom together, and we did the nasty. After that, I went back to bed, and nobody ever found out. Story time about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So a little background information, I was living with my dad and I had just started a new school and I became really good friends with this group of kids. And in our friend group, there was this boy who we're going to call Alex. And him and I hit it off like right away. We had been talking for 2 months. And by the way, during this whole time, his friends were telling me how much he loved me and how much he wanted to be with me. So eventually him and I started dating. And of course, like any other tragic love story, I had to move far away because I had to go live with my mom, blah, 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 blah. But since I would visit my dad for the holidays, him and I would still be able to see each other sometimes, which is pretty good for a long distance relationship, especially when you're in school. So I told him about how I had to move. And he was really sad, but he said that I can trust him. Red flag number 1, because why would you say that in the first place? There should be no reason on why I have to, quote, trust you to be loyal when I'm away. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So like I said, I told him that we were going to have to do long distance and he was sad, but then he said that he could trust me. And like I said before, why the hell would I have to trust you? Because you should just be loyal in general, duh. So I'm like, hey, I want to spend time with you before I leave. Can we hang out? And he was like, oh, sorry, I have plans, but we can hang out later tonight. So I was like, okay, whatever. And a few hours go by. I never get a text from him or a call, nothing. So I text him and he's like, sorry, I forgot. So I'm really sad right now, but I forgave him. Quick note here, ladies, if he wanted to, he would. He would have canceled his plans if he really wanted to see you. Anyway, so I move and fast forward 2 to 3 weeks. And Alex and I literally have only been texting, no calls, nothing like that. So I'm talking to one of his friends and one of his friends tells me that he's been talking to this other girl. And he's been telling everybody that he's been wanting to break up with me for weeks because he wants to date her instead, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So like I said, I was talking to his friend and his friend said that he's been talking to this girl for 2 to 3 weeks about the time that I've been gone. And he's been telling everybody about how he wants to break up with me for her. So of course I'm sad and crying and I confront him and he says, oh, she's just a friend, blah, blah, blah. So I press the issue and then he tells me that he lost feelings for me weeks ago. And that the reason why he didn't tell me was because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. Yet he led me on for 2 to 3 weeks. Like, how does that work, Alex? How? Anyway, so I blocked him because there's no way in hell that I'm going to keep talking to a guy that was making fun of me with his friends and telling everybody around him that he wanted to break up with me. That's embarrassing. Story time about my toxic ex-best friend. So a little background information. I had a very close guy friend who we're going to call Max. Now, Max was 2 years older than me, but due to our families being super close, him and I became best friends. Growing up, I saw him as kind of an older brother. And then eventually as we grew up, I saw him as my best friend. Until I realized that he was actually a terrible person. And I missed all of the signs that he was not a real friend. Like 1, our first fight, I told him something that I didn't want anybody else knowing. And what do you know, right after I tell him, my family knows, his family knows, my crush knows, all of our friends know. After this, I probably should have distanced myself, but he apologized and we became friends again. That was sign number 1. Sign number 2, his huge change in attitude. 1 second, he would be extremely rude to me, and then he would be this really sweet and caring guy, and his apologies were the best. So it was really hard not to forgive him. He was like a master manipulator. Number 3, we only talked whenever it was convenient for him. Like seriously, we would never talk unless he needed something, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic ex-best friend. I think we left off on sign number 3, which was the only time that we would talk was when it was convenient for him. He would never reach out, which left me being the one who was constantly trying to preserve our friendship or whatever was left of it. Like all of our messages were literally me and it made me seem really needy and like I was putting in way too much effort because he would literally answer with the most simple messages. Like, yeah, Okay, sure. And he would only talk to me whenever he wasn't with his friends. Sign number 4. It felt like he was embarrassed of me. Now, I know that I was 2 years younger than him, but we were still friends, and I really don't think that's that much of a difference. Like, he would never want to be seen with me. The last sign, he would literally always talk about me behind my back. And I thought this was just rumors at first, until finally several people told me that it was not a rumor. He would say things like, oh, she's ugly, she's so immature, she's annoying and childish, she's so annoying. And then I finally decided to cut him off. Because if the bad outweighed the good, was it really worth keeping that person in my life? Part 2 about how this guy and his girlfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, him and I did the nasty at the football game, and then I go onto the bleachers with my friends, and she tells me that he has a girlfriend. But I'm not gonna lie, at this point, we had already been talking for 2 months, and I really didn't care because I liked him and I wasn't just gonna turn my feelings off. First of all, I do not owe that girl any loyalty. Number 2, we were already intimate with each other, so I don't know what could make this situation worse than it already was. I mean, I did confront him about it, and he told me that he was gonna break up with her for me. So I believed him. I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna wait for him to break it off with her, and I'm still gonna talk to him. So eventually, he literally made me wait for like 2 more months. So what did I do? I told his girlfriend everything. I'm not gonna lie, it's not even that I wanted to be a good person. It was literally just to spite him. It's like, yeah, your man wants to be with me. He don't want you. This is the text messages of him telling me that he was gonna break up with you. That day, he called me and he was like, hey, do you wanna hang out? And I was shook that he did not bring up anything that I said to his girlfriend. Like for part 3. Storytime about how this girl and her boyfriend beat me up. So a little background information, I was in 11th grade and I was 17 years old. And in the summer, my friend and I went to go and watch fireworks for the 4th of July at this park. And most of the people there went to a completely different school. But we ended up meeting this group of guys, and I was really vibing with the one guy who was there. He was super cute, super chill, and we got along great. And I just want to put this out there, I did not think to ask that he had a girlfriend because he was being super flirtatious and just really wasn't acting like he had a girlfriend. I literally just hate how we have to ask people if they're in relationships now because they don't want to be honest or loyal. And then we would look like the bad guys because they were dishonest. Anyway, so him and I start to hang out a lot, and he really likes me, I really like him. And we went to this football game at his school, and we ended up doing the nasty. After that, I'm in the bleachers with my friends, and one of my friends tells me, yeah, he has a girlfriend. So she couldn't have told me this before we did the nasty. Anyways, like for part 2. Part 3 about how this girl and her boyfriend literally beat me up. So like I said, I told his girlfriend everything about how he didn't want her. I sent her the receipts and everything. And then she has the audacity to tell me I'm disgusting, I'm this, I'm that, saying that I'm gross for even doing anything with him. I should have known that he had a girlfriend. I should have told him off. Like, sis, your man did not mention you once. He didn't even mention you as an ex-girlfriend, so put the blame on him, not me. So later that day, he invites me over, and I am shook because I at least thought that he was going to bring it up and be like, why did you text my girlfriend? So I thought that maybe she was one of those girls where she's like, OMG, my man is never wrong. I'm not even going to confront him because I don't want him to break up with me, and it just wasn't his fault. So fast forward, I get to his house. I usually just walk in because I've been over there so many times. Well, as soon as I walk in the door, him and his girlfriend start wailing on me. I ended up with a few broken ribs, but I also ended up pregnant with his child. His family thinks that he should be with me since I'm having his kid. She decided to stay with him, so she comes to every prenatal appointment. Storytime about why I will never babysit ever again. So a little background information, I was 17 and a senior in high school. And my parents were super annoyed about the fact that I hadn't had a job since I was 14. So their friends just happened to need a babysitter, so they told me that I had to do it. So fast forward, I go over there super early in the morning, and the mom had already left for work, and the dad, who we're gonna call Will, he was just about to leave, and before he walked out the door, he told me that there was a list of things that needed to be done before they got home. So their daughter Autumn, who was 5 years old, she was still sleeping, and I was reading through the list, and it was just normal stuff, like nap time at 2 o'clock, no pop after 7 o'clock, that sort of stuff. And then it had an arrow pointing towards the back. And when I flipped the page over, it said, by the way, Autumn is scared to bathe by herself, so please get a shower with her. And I was not comfortable with that, so I called my mom and I told her about it, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never ever babysit ever again. So like I said, I flipped the page over and it said that their daughter was scared to bathe alone, so I would have to take a shower with her. And I called my mom and I told her about it. And she was like, well, honey, that doesn't sound that weird. Don't you remember when your little brother was scared of the toilet and we would have to take him to the bathroom and stand there with him for 20 minutes while he tried to go to the bathroom? So I was super annoyed that she was even comparing those two situations. Because first of all, that was my little brother. Second of all, this is just freaking weird. So I told her to bring my bathing suit over, and then I did everything on the list. Fast forward, Autumn said that she really liked me, so her parents wanted me to come over and babysit again. So I did, and whenever I was setting up the shower that day, there was a stack of towels sitting on the toilet, and when I picked it up to move it, a camera fell out of the pile of towels as soon as I picked it up, and it was recording. I was really weirded out, but I wanted to show it to my mom. So I am about to get ready to go to playlist, and I wanted to do a get ready with me while I tell you facts about myself. So I am 20 years old and I live in Florida. I have 3 younger sisters. I have also been a content creator now for 2 years. And I would definitely have to say that one of my biggest pet peeves is whenever Netflix removes my favorite shows. I mean, I guess I can't really call it a pet peeve anymore since I did find a solution to my problem. So I downloaded this app called ExpressVPN, which is a virtual private network app. The best thing about this app is that you can change your location and no app on your phone will know where you are. So when I'm not connected and I look up The Office on Netflix, it's not going to be there. But whenever I switch my location to Canada and I look up The Office, and voila, there it is. And if you click the link in my bio, you get 7 days free. But I'm pretty much all ready to go to playlist, and I'm super scared, but hopefully I see some of you guys there. Storytime about how I found my uncle sleeping with my best friend. So a little background information. I was 18 at the time and a freshman in college. My uncle was a National Guard, and we were the same age, we went to the same school, and we also had the same friends. And while he was away, I had made one friend that he didn't know about. Her and I became best friends, we got into the same college, and we were in the same dorm room together. Well, the one day my uncle came to my college to surprise me. I ran up to him, I gave him a big hug, and my best friend was super confused because I had never introduced them. And when I introduced them, there was this weird, awkward vibe. So all 3 of us went back to the dorm room, and I asked her if it was okay that he spent the night, because I didn't want to be that person to just invade her space. So she ended up saying yes. And eventually we all got really hungry, and we all wanted Chick-fil-A, so I went and I left them all alone in the room together. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I found my uncle sleeping with my best friend. So like I said, I went to go get us Chick-fil-A and I left them in the dorm all alone together. While I was waiting in line, I called them to ask what they wanted and nobody answered the phone. So I was like, okay, whatever, it's fine. They're probably just busy talking. So I low-key took a long time because I went to the grocery store to get some cookies. I was just craving them. So then I get back to the dorm room. As soon as I open the door, I see both of them unclothed on top of each other on the bed, doing the nasty. So for some reason, I had a broom and I threw it at my uncle and I went to my friend's apartment that night. And when I told my mom about it, she said that it was my fault because weirdly enough, they praised all the boys in my family. Storytime about how my best friend started seeing my mom. So we're gonna call my best friend Joey. Joey and I had been best friends since we were 4 years old, and my family was really close with his and vice versa. And she had always been really nice to him, of course because he was a family friend and he was my best friend. Well, one day I thought that she liked him a little bit more than she liked me. She would always ask the weirdest questions. Like, oh, is Joey single? Or what's Joey's sexuality? Like, sis had a whole ass husband. But at the time, I didn't think anything of it because I just thought that she really wanted him and I to date. But when he turned 15, things started getting a little bit weirder. Like, sometimes he would go over my house right after school, even when I wasn't there to hang out with my mother. And usually the only time he was at the house was whenever him and I were hanging out. Well, the one day I walked in and they were both sitting on the couch talking. And when they both saw me, they acted like nothing was wrong with it. Like for part 2 about how my best friend started seeing my mom. So like I said, the one day I come home after school and they're both sitting on the couch already talking. And they look at me and say hi as if nothing was wrong with the situation. And then after that, Joey started mentioning how my mom was so hot. And I was like, yeah, no, she's pretty, but that's it. Well, the one day my mom left for work earlier than she usually does. So I messaged my dad and asked him if he wanted to hang out. So of course he said yes, and 5 hours later I came home and I go upstairs. And I'm just like hearing things from my mother's bedroom. So I go up and I open the door. And because I don't want this video to get taken down, you guys probably can guess what I saw. So I ran out of the room, ran downstairs. I start panicking. And Joey came and hugged me and said, I'm sorry, me and your mom just love each other. So I told them both they were absolutely disgusting. So then my mom starts crying and begging me to forgive her. And now I live with my dad. Story time about the worst day of my life. So a little background information. I was 16 at the time, and I was either in 8th grade or 9th grade, but I really don't remember. And I had this boyfriend who we are going to call Cameron. We had been dating for 3 years, but before him and I got together, we were best friends. Well, I also was in a friend group with myself, Amber, and this girl named Sky. Now, I wouldn't really call Sky a pick-me girl. She was more of a jealous best friend. For example, the one day we went shopping for dresses, and I picked this one out that I really liked and that looked super good on me. Amber was like, OMG, you look so beautiful. And then Sky, she was like, that dress is ugly and it makes you look fat. Well, after that, I told her I didn't care what she said and that I was going to get the dress anyways. Well, she didn't like the fact that I wasn't going to listen to her, so she didn't talk to me for 2 whole weeks. And then after, she texted me saying that she forgives me, even though I didn't apologize, but okay. Well then, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Bad idea, like for part 2. Part 2 about the worst day of my life. So like I said, me being stupid, I introduced her to my boyfriend. Well, after that, Cameron started acting really weird. Like him and I, we would literally hang out with each other 24/7. And now, he was always too busy for me and we would only talk at school. And because I was in all the smart classes and stuff, I would go over to his house to tutor him. Because, you know, I was like the one who was winning every single fucking award for being smart. Well, I came over on the day that I would usually tutor him. And when I went over there, his mom was like, oh, he's busy, he's out with his friends. So then I went home and I got bored and I opened Instagram. Well, I see that he's at a party with Sky and they didn't even invite me. So I asked him about it, and he said, oh, it was her and her boyfriend's party. So I was like, that wasn't really an excuse for why you didn't invite me. So he apologized and I forgave him. Well, 5 weeks later, I found out that him and her did the nasty, and she got pregnant. And then there was a rumor going around that they made out in the bathroom. So I blocked both of them and never saw them again. Storytime about how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So just some background information. My husband and I got engaged 2 years ago. And this whole situation happened a month after we got married. So fast forward, it's a Sunday morning. Well, usually every week on Sunday, I clean the whole house. So I woke up, went into the bathroom to take my ring off, and I could not get it off. Mind you, I had gained a little bit of weight since my husband and I got engaged. Anyways, I tried butter, I tried soap, I tried everything, even oil. So after trying to get it off for an hour straight, my finger was 3 times bigger than it usually is. So at this point, I'm really scared that I'm going to have to get it cut off. Because 1, I didn't want to ruin it. And 2, it was really expensive. So I call my husband and he's like, oh, call your dad. Firefighters always know what to do. So I called my dad and thank God he lived 5 minutes away because he drove over really quickly. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, my dad lived 5 minutes away, so he just rushed over to my house. And we tried a few more things to get it off. We tried Windex, we tried the dental floss, none of it was working. So my dad told me that we were going to have to cut it off with pliers. So he comes over with the pliers, cuts the ring off. Well, a few days later, I had taken it to the same place that we got it to get the band fixed. Or replaced. While I was there, I decided to get it appraised. Just for insurance reasons. So a few days later, I go and pick up my ring, and when I get home, I look at the appraisal. It was not the same one that I had picked out in the store. It looked exactly like it, but there was like a $20,000 price difference. So right now, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not mad about the money part. I'm more mad that my husband lied to me. I was more upset about the fact that he had lied to me. So I had made dinner reservations for the next night, so that way I could hopefully bring up the conversation about it, like for part 3. Part 3 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, I had made reservations for him and I to go out to dinner so that way I could hopefully spark up the conversation about it. So when we finally sat down, I had started up the conversation. I had told him that when I took my ring in to get it fixed, I also got it appraised. And his face immediately changed after that, but he wasn't saying anything. He was like, oh, okay, how did that go? So at this point, I was tired of beating around the bush, and I was like, why wouldn't you just tell me if we were having money troubles? And he was like, what do you mean? We're not having any money troubles. I'm fine. One thing about my husband is that he is very wealthy. And he takes pride in the fact that he is very wealthy. So obviously, me right there kind of questioning his wealth, he fucked up and told me the truth. He was like, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I accidentally gave the ring that I was supposed to give you to a girl I was seeing at the time. And I just never got around to replacing yours. So fast forward to present day, I am currently moving all of my stuff out of our house and filing for divorce. Story time about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So a little background information. This had all started as soon as my dad left my mom and I. I was like 13 around the time. Well, ever since then, my mom would have different guys in and out of the house all the time. Like, we were lucky if a month went by and she was still with the same dude. Which, I mean, I kind of get it because my dad did leave us for a woman that he had started another family with. But at the same time, it was just a whole mess. Anyway, so she had got with this new guy and we're gonna call him Tyler. And by the way, the dudes that she would date, they would literally live at our house. Anyway, so a week after he moved in, I started getting really close to him, which usually never happens. Usually I would try to keep my distance because I knew how wrong it was of her having all these different guys in the house when I'm only 16. Anyways, every time that my mom would go to work, he would invite me to go see a movie and he would just be really flirty with me. And he was only 6 years older than me. And my mom was 32. You do the math. Anyways, like for part 2.